All right, let's just go ahead and get started. Once again, thank you very much for taking time to attend this webinar pertaining to USMCA and the nearshoring, reshoring solution. We're hoping to be able to provide a lot of great information for you guys pertaining to the changes that have been made from NAFTA to USMCA, and really the big picture here is, now that we have USMCA, how can we utilize it as an opportunity to be able to expand our businesses and talk about the collaboration between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. And today, can we have the first slide pertaining to AMS? In any case, so the webinar is being sponsored and paid for by the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions Department of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission in conjunction with the Arkansas District Export Council and the National Associations of District Export Councils. All righty. Okay, excellent. So the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions Department focuses strictly on manufacturers in Arkansas. Obviously, we have people who have a lot of expertise in innovation and bringing innovation 4.0 manufacturing to Arkansas. We also have people who have expertise in operational excellence, sustainability, leadership, and obviously exporting. Yeah, so Dina Santos is the Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner for Canada out of the Dallas office, and she has jurisdiction over Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and New Mexico, and she's just got a tremendous background in international business. And of course, we have her here because we want her to talk about the Canadian perspective pertaining to USMCA and the collaboration in North America between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. We also have Mr. Alejandro Rojas. He was previously one of the people who was negotiating on the Mexican side during NAFTA, and has a lot of experience with international business as well, and currently is with a international consulting firm called M Square out of Mexico. And we look to him to be able to provide a lot of guidance in terms of Mexico, the perspective there, and how we can collaborate together in terms of supply chain management. Okay. And we also have Mr. Ernesto Pinal. He's one of my colleagues at the National Deck. He's with the Idaho District Export Council, and he's also on the board of directors of the National Association of District Export Councils, and he's a sales manager for the company that he works and has been working for, and has a lot of experience doing international business. And so he's got kind of a great combination of practical business expansion internationally, and also has experience in trade policy at the international level. So we look to him to kind of cover the U.S. perspective. So we have Dina covering the Canadian perspective, Alejandro covering the Mexican perspective, Ernesto covering the American perspective, and I'm the moderator, Rudy Ortiz. Okay, and this is an interactive poll. So if you guys will check whatever is pertinent would be great. Whether you guys are currently importing supplies from Canada or exporting, or both, and currently importing or exporting to Mexico. That'll give us kind of a good sense of who's doing what. And we'll 6%, 60? 6% are importing from Canada. Okay, and there's 56% of the people who are attending who are exporting to Canada. 6% importing from Mexico, and 56% exporting to Mexico. Outstanding. All right, so we've got quite a bit of experience there. Well over half of the webinar participants who are doing trade at some level with either Canada and or Mexico. All righty, so we're going to have a couple of questions here, and we're going to be talking to posing the questions to both Dina, Alejandro, and Ernesto. And the first question to Ernesto is, how is North America a general landscape as a consequence of NAFTA, and what are the most prominent sectors that have evolved over the last years, now leading up to USMCA?
Thank you very much, Rudy, for your question. I think the journey of NAFTA from 26 years ago to today has been a fantastic story to tell. The first thing I would like to mention is that the regional trade in North America has quadrupled from 1994 that the USMCA was implemented to today, or basically to 2019, I have to say, but pretty much today. The direct investment and creating this integration of North America as a trading bloc has also exponentially grown, and it went from about 15 billion in 1994 to 100 billion for the same period of years from 1994 to 2018. So we can see the effects of the NAFTA. Now, in terms of trade and how the partnerships within North America have been built, then if we look at the chart, we can see that the main two partners, as expected, are Mexico and Canada, and they pretty much are even. These numbers are from end of 2019. In the case of Mexico, the trade export and imports with the US was accounted at 614 billion, and in the case of Canada, 612 billion, so almost identical. The third largest partner is China. Differently to what the public opinion thinks, that China is the partner number one, as you can see, is not. It's actually the third. But there is something very interesting to look at that chart, and that is the imbalance that we have with China between export and imports. What the U.S. exports to China, it's about 17% of the total trade with China, and the remaining, more than 80-something%, is imports from China. Equally, we have Japan and Germany. Those are the next two largest trading blocs that the U.S. has today. So this number, 614 billion, 601 billion for Mexico and Canada, are really the result of the NAFTA. Next slide, please. Next. Now, how is NAFTA in terms compares to other trading blocs that the main ones that exist today? And I think the one to compare it with is the European Union, and then of course China. But as you can see, NAFTA is by far the largest free trade agreement in the world today, and the next closest is the European Union. And we can see that it's about 2/3 of what NAFTA is in terms of US exports and US imports. China, as I said, it's about half of the total of what we generate in the North America trading. And last but not least is Japan. As you can see, that will be the next trading bloc that we have. These numbers and the fact that NAFTA is in excess of 30-something% of what the trade with the European Union is because of the 26 years that NAFTA has been in place. These are the results of that local integration.
Thank you, Ernesto. If you can have the next slide, and the next question is for Dina. Yeah, so Dina, the evolution of supply chains is one of the most tangible deliverables of NAFTA and of course of USMCA today. And aerospace is a particularly important industry in Canada, and Canada's been a really strong player in the last several years. Can you share with us some of the accomplishments in terms of supply chain management and supply chain strategies and prospects in terms of USMCA in this particular industry?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rudy, and hello, everybody. So this is a great question. Ensuring a strong Canadian aerospace sector is crucial to the rebuilding of Canada's economy, given aerospace's, the industry's substantial contributions to our nation's economic health on an annual basis. $31 billion in revenues, over $25 billion to the GDP, and nearly 215,000 jobs. Canadian aerospace products move people and goods around the world, make space exploration possible, and provide technological capabilities that impact daily life in countless ways. But how we move, connect, and live has changed dramatically over the last 25 years since NAFTA went into effect. That's one of the overarching reasons why the Canadian aerospace and defense industry strongly supports USMCA. Maintaining the free flow of aerospace items between Canada, Mexico, and the US will benefit the aerospace industries in all three countries. The USMCA modernizes trade with our North American trading partners in 4 areas that are particularly relevant to the aerospace industry: market access for goods, intellectual property, digital trade, and customs and trade facilitation. In terms of market access, airplanes are made up of hundreds of thousands of parts and components. The world relies on North American-built aircrafts to move people and goods across the world. Many parts or components come from our three countries, not just from one destination. The USMCA includes a commitment to limit increases of duties or customs on goods, which means fewer surprises when one of the companies in the aerospace sector needs to import a part, particularly one not found in the domestic supply chain, from one of our neighbor countries. Broadly, this commitment supports the free flow of goods and allows the Canadian aerospace industry to build our trade surplus while maintaining our leadership in the field. On intellectual property, as a leading innovator, the Canadian aerospace and defense industry continues to develop cutting-edge technologies and aircraft such as drones, air taxi technologies, electric batteries in vehicles, lightweight materials, space technologies like robotics and satellite communications that will change the way we move, connect, and explore in the future. But research and development can take years as the technology goes from concept to prototype to the global market. So during that time, the product developers are vulnerable as they try to protect their intellectual property. The USMCA's intellectual property chapter will help protect Canadian technologies and continued R&D investment by requiring the 3 governments to establish criminal, civil, and administrative procedures and remedies to combat IP theft. This also sets a standard for future agreements, as we can use the USMCA as a model in future negotiations.
Excellent. Go ahead. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
On digital trade, when NAFTA was signed, there was no digital economy. Since then, countless technological advances, including blockchain, 3D printing, and digital design, have significantly changed our lives. So the chapter on digital trade normalizes digital products such as these. And then finally, customs and trade facilitation. So arriving at the border can be a cumbersome process for people and goods alike. The USMCA makes border crossings more efficient by standardizing rules for exporters and importers, and will likely even reduce administrative delays and transaction costs in cross-border trade.
Very good. And Dina, one of the things that, even though right now you're currently talking about aerospace, I think the thing that's important to understand is that the real value of USMCA is that the lack of barriers of tariff barriers and customs barriers. It's almost, I mean, it's really as it says, it's North American, right? And so this facility of doing business between Mexico, Canada, and the United States, acting as a block, as a cohesive block to be able to do business in a very low level tariffs, either very, very low, or in many cases zero. And so you're able to compete in those countries. Mexico can compete with in Canada, in the United States, on and on and on. But it also provides us a facility to be able to work together and compete globally as a partnership. Very good. If we can have,
I couldn't agree more, Rudy.
Thank you. And if we could have the next one. And this one is this next slide and discussion is with Alejandro. Alejandro, the automobile manufacturing sector is perhaps the most important or iconic representative of supply chain management accomplishments realized during NAFTA in terms of Mexico and now under USMCA. Can you please tell us about how the process has evolved and what are the prospects for the automotive sector in the next coming years due to USMCA?
Thank you, Rudy. Well, I must say that this was pretty much the hardest part of the negotiation during the USMCA negotiation process. Was one of the last chapters to be closed, but the most important is the relevance of the auto sector, but the whole region. I'm presenting you just a case about just to give you an idea how integrated we are. We have heard a lot of times that to move from raw materials to a final vehicle, the parts and components cross the borders between the three countries more than 6-7 times. And here's the case. So you can get the raw material from Michigan, there it goes to Ontario, all the way back and forth between the three countries, being machined, having some from some treatments, then it's incorporated into a machine, an engine, and then it becomes part of a final product, Canadian, in this case, Canadian vehicle to be exported according to the North American rules of origin. So this gives us an idea about how we are taking advantage of the competitive advantage of each of the three countries. I will speak later about the why to do business in Mexico, and I've seen that a lot of your companies are currently exporting to Mexico. That's also quite relevant to know that I guess most of these exports are part of or components for not only for the auto industry, but for their strategic companies in Mexico. So in the future, as you know, the only sector which suffer modification in rules of origins all across the agreement, all across the sectors, it was only the auto industry. So starting July 1st this year, not only vehicles, but also some strategic core parts will have to accomplish or to include more regional components in order to continue receiving the benefits of the free trade agreement. So just to give you an idea, vehicles before by June 30, the rule of origin was about 62.5%. In 3 years, vehicles will have to reach up to 75%. There's a way that assemblers can ask for a longer term, but this gives you an idea about what's the final result of the agreement, how we depend on each other to strengthen and to maintain our competitiveness, not only in the North American region, but in other markets. We are exporting vehicles from Mexico to the markets in Europe and Asia. And it's also important to mention that following what Dina was mentioning is that the new agreement also incorporates ideas about or the basis about the future of the auto industry, considering special treatments for components used to assemble electrical vehicles like batteries and some other high-tech auto parts. So it's quite important for us, but the good news, the message for American and Canadian exporters is that companies, OEMs and tier ones in Mexico will rely a lot on components produced or manufactured in the US and Canada, because we need those parts to continue complying with the rules of origin. So this is Mexico is not only a destination for investment, but it's also a destination, a large market for auto parts. And the same is happening in other sectors. The aerospace sector also relied a lot on components from our two North American partners.
Perfect. And Alejandro, one of the things that we saw just a little bit earlier when Ernesto had his slide up is how close in trade the United States is with Canada. There's not this huge imbalance, right? We're trading with each other as if Texas was trading with Arkansas. We're neighbors and we're trading with each other, and it's very, very uneven. The numbers between the balances between Canada and the United States, between Canada and Mexico, Mexico and the United States. It's a partnership, and I think that's one thing that perhaps people don't have any real clarity on, is just how tied our economies and our businesses are you have Canadian companies that are buying, as you said, buying from Mexico, raw materials, converting them, then sending the finished product to the United States, and vice versa. So it's almost like this seamlessness in the borders in terms of trade, and it's something that I think now with USMCA is going to be actually further enhanced. If we can have the next one. Okay, this question here is for Ernesto. Ernesto, what are the states within the U.S. that benefit the most of the trade generated by, first NAFTA and now consequently with the USMCA?
Well, this is a great question, Rudy, and it goes just in line to what you were alluding to, which is what this integration within North America has produced. And I think there are some tangible numbers that we can cite. And I would like to start by saying that these numbers are from 2018, generated by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that around 5 million direct U.S. jobs and 7 million indirect U.S. jobs depend on trade with Canada and Mexico. So it's basically North America. The integration that we have been working on the last 26 years, these numbers are proof of that successful story. In the case of Canada, for example, Canada is the customer #1 for 32 of the U.S. states. So basically, Canada is the best customer for those 32 U.S. states. In the case of Mexico is the largest export market, or the best customer, for seven of the largest U.S. states, particularly those in the Southwest. And it's the second largest after Canada for 19 U.S. states. So this tells you the whole story. Now, if we want to look at in terms of jobs dependency and how much activation of jobs have occurred in the states, this is not the whole list, but on your left-hand side, you can see that California leads. The second one is Texas, with almost 500,000 jobs, depending on trade within North America, with Canada or Mexico, and then Florida, Illinois, Pennsylvania, et cetera, et cetera. So if we can conclude something, is the integration that has occurred in the last 26 years has not only enabled this competitiveness and this sophisticated manufacturing chains, but it has also connected jobs, opportunities. There are areas in certain US states that depend totally on Canada or on Mexico. I mean, completely, communities that totally depend on that. In the case of Canada, I think in the northern states of Illinois, New York, there are very big areas that depend on basically the activity with Canada. And same thing happens in the southwest border of the US. There are regions that totally depend on trade and commerce with Mexico. I think this is a very nice picture of what we have accomplished, and how, if we continue this North American integration, these numbers are not just going to grow, but it will give us the survival elements that we will need to be able to compete with other trading blocs, particularly those from Asia.
Perfect. Absolutely. I happen to be in Arkansas, and we sell, we're a big agricultural state, and the amount of trade that we have both with Canada and Mexico on the ag side is just humongous. I just cannot expand just how important those two countries are for our sales of ag products, and also Arkansas obviously has a strong automotive and aeronautical industry as well. And once again, just this ubiquitous linkage between Canada and Mexico. If you'll get us the next one. Thank you. So there are three, this is going to be from Ms. Dina. There are three factors that are occurring at the same time that make up the need to really think about and reassess supply chain management, and which has become, very evidently, as brought to light by COVID, more important than ever. The first is that tariff implementation with China. The second is the exposure that COVID has made the existence of supply chains much more fragile and evidently so, right? And the third are the benefits that the new USMCA implementation brings about. Dina, so what are some of the things that should be considered in the context of the development of this new development of supply chain efforts from the Canadian perspective?
Well, that's an excellent question, Rudy. So cooperation through NAFTA has created a North America where Canadian, American, and Mexican companies do more than make and sell things to each other now. Our companies increasingly just make things jointly. This has not changed. Actually, USMCA is just there to optimize that. And I'm so happy that you you showed a slide in terms of showing the relationships between our three countries. Just the US and Canada share $1 trillion trade and investment relationship, and it is balanced. We buy more from the US than any other country by a wide range. Mexico's Canada's third largest partner. So as companies consider nearshoring and reshoring opportunities, I'm just going to highlight a couple of areas where, you know, we're all building on each other's strengths, right? So in terms of in terms of North American competitiveness, you know, Canada has a very highly educated and diverse talent pool in the world. 2/3 of our working Canadians have a post-secondary education. If you walk in Toronto, there's about 196 languages spoken in that city alone, and we are a bilingual country. We actually launched what we call a global skill strategy in 2017. So we are actually trying to recruit about 1 million Canadians over the next 3 years to Canada. And for the skilled labor that we are seeking, we actually have streamlined and accelerated a timeline process. So basically, you know, the world's greatest talent can just come to Canada within a 2-week time frame once a company sponsors them. We have a very advantageous competitive tax environment, lots of great R&D incentives, a very low corporate tax rate. So a lot of leading technology companies in the US have established R&D centers in Canada, taking advantage of our skilled labor force. And then really what this slide shows is our access to global markets. So we have 14 free trade agreements covering 51 markets, including every G7 member. And Canada is basically a gateway to nearly 1.5 billion consumers in 51 markets, representing over 60% of the world GDP. And that's very important because at the end of the day, you know, we've set very predictable tariff-free zones where basically we can grow as a North American region and, you know, send our exports around the world in order to bring back prosperity to North America.
You know, and one of the things that you were kind of highlighting, you know, was the direct trade. But I think one of the things that people kind of miss out on is while, you know, we did this poll early on and asked, you know, how many people are exporting and importing. But while there is a significant amount of direct exporting and importing between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, there's a tremendous amount of indirect exporting and importing, right? So what happens is I'll ask a client, so, you know, where do you get your supplies from? And they'll tell me, well, I get it from this guy in Wisconsin, right? But the reality is that the guy in Wisconsin is getting his stuff from Canada, or, you know, I'm getting my stuff from Texas, but actually it's being imported from Mexico to Texas to Arkansas. And so there's a tremendous amount of times where there are companies in the states that everyone is in, that your product is part of another product that is being exported to Canada, to Mexico, and as this slide shows, consequently throughout the entire world. It's just a piece of what's happening, and you may or may not be directly aware of the fact that it's actually being exported as a part of a bigger operation to not only to North America, but throughout the entire world. If we could have the next one, please. And this next question is for Alejandro. Mexico, given its strategic location within North America and given some of the competitive advantages that it has, it's an ideal candidate to consider for nearshoring operations. What are some of the most relevant aspects of Mexico to be aware of, and how could Mexico enhance the new supply chain strategies that need to be developed?
Thanks, Rudy. Well, by far being part of this North American partnership, it's one of our main advantages. I must say, Rudy, it was fun. It's funny that the only agreement that our three governments didn't reach was the name of the agreement. It's called CUSMA, it's called USMCA, it's called TEMEC. I don't know why. We miss NAFTA. So regarding Mexico, the thing is that many times the first shot is Mexico considered like a cheap labor country. I must say that we are not anymore. The main message we give as a consultant firm when we hear these words is that if that was the case, why the OEMs or the manufacturers are not moving to Central America or South America? They are even cheaper than us. So we are not really, it's not only a matter of cost. We have a really high skilled labor. We have really easy to be trained. And that's one of the main advantages that global companies are taking by locating in the country. And also the other advantages is our location, our network of free trade agreements. If you operate from Mexico, we can export not only to the North American market. We have agreements with the EU. We are part of these regional initiatives, Alianza del Pacífico, and other countries. So there are a lot of factors that make Mexico really competitive, and again, it's taking advantage of the benefits that each country offers across the supply chains. Definitely, we have our labor cost is not as high as in Canada and the US, but it's compensated by the quality of our work as engineers and so on. And also being part of the NAFTA gives certainty to foreign operators and investors. It's not the same as investing in some countries in Asia and intellectual properties and some other rules. You never know what's going to happen. In our case, we have a long-term agreement. We have operated under the same rules for 26 years. The agreement has been improved, and that gives a lot of benefits for Canadian and American companies currently supplying from other regions to move part of that as sources to Mexico.
You know, Alejandro, one of the things that we haven't stated just kind of outright, you know, one of the other major advantages, and you kind of highlighted that a little bit, and that is because we are close to each other, the distance in terms of supply chains. You know, for instance, one of the problems that we've been seeing for the last several months because of COVID is stuff coming out of the other side of the world, whether it's Europe or whether it's China or some other place. And the amount of time that it takes to be able to get the product from there to here can be, you know, from several weeks to several months. Now, one of the major problems with that particular issue, even under good situations, is that if the timeline is 2 months versus a week, that means that you have to have significantly more inventory on hand to be able to make up for that time lag, right? Well, you know, one of the things that I tell my clients and students is that when you're looking at inventory on a rack, what you really should be seeing is dollars. You know, it's not pistons or whatever. It's actually dollars sitting there, right? And that's money that can be invested in other areas to actually produce profits, right? So the fact that we're very close to each other, the timelines are much shorter, much more secure, as you were indicating, Alejandro. I think it's just hugely important. If we can have the next one. Okay, this next question is for Ernesto. Ernesto, what are some of the opportunities that the new USMCA offer to companies contemplating to readjust, to recalibrate their supply chain management strategies, particularly under the prospect of decentralizing manufacturing those processes?
Thank you, Rudy, for the question. I will start by saying that I would like to make establish a difference here. The NAFTA, for example, in the last 26 years was an agreement that was really drafted taking into consideration the large corporations, the multinational corporations. It was very well designed for them. They took advantage of it. They benefited from it. And you know that some of the numbers that we saw in previous slides are a proof and a testament of the results of that. But there was not much for the small and medium-sized enterprises. And primarily because at the time, they were probably not considered potential players for this agreement. Now, the USMCA, with the updates, it actually makes a big effort to incorporate and allow, give some room for small and medium-sized enterprises to play. And this is very important. Now, we could, this chart that you see right there, it's an X-ray of the changes or enhancements to the USMCA. I promise I could speak for hours about each of those items. I'm not going to bore you on that, but I will just concentrate on some of the most important. I think the prime is regional competitiveness. We have to start thinking of the USMCA as a block. Again, what is the reason? What is the purpose of that? What should we expect to see in the next 10, 20 years? Is to have a North American that is more competitive, that is better suited and better equipped to face challenges coming particularly from Asia. And how are we going to do that? How the USMCA could help us? Well, let me just go through some of the main items of the enhancements of the USMCA. The first one is the preferential access. I believe that Alejandro and Dina already made some reference of that, that as part of the block, if you cannot source some of your components from a local jurisdiction, then your next should be part of the USMCA, so basically Mexico, Canada. And the textile industry is probably one of the best examples that illustrates how that collaboration could work, what you could expect out of it. The next one is investment. The new chapters in the USMCA about investment simplify what you need to do in order to move and invest in Mexico and Canada or in the US, and makes it more feasible for small and medium-sized enterprises. Before, it was close to impossible. Yeah. They will have to rely on armies of lawyers, armies of a lot of very expensive professionals in order to even consider an investment. Now the USMCA has simplified that and makes it really, really affordable and doable for small and medium-sized enterprises. The changes in some of the temporary entry regulations facilitate this integration that Alejandro described very accurately with the piston example. That's an example. That's a perfect sample of how this temporary entry could benefit moving around between the US, Canada, and Mexico. Then development cooperation. There are some stipulations for forming working groups in development cooperation so that opportunities can be identified within North America, and then those could be tackled as a region, not as independent countries. The USMCA includes some very important changes for small and medium-sized enterprises regarding gender, labor, anti-corruption, and environment. And then the certainty for trade and investment, that's probably one of the most important parts for small and medium-sized enterprises, particularly to allow growth and incorporation of small companies into the benefits of the North America competitiveness block. There are some significant changes for state-owned enterprises that limit actually the subsidies that in the past, even within NAFTA, some of the state-owned enterprises had. And it made it very difficult for outsiders to participate, compete, and gain projects. The USMCA takes care of that. And this is a great, great change. Then the dispute settlement mechanisms, they have been simplified also through working groups in order to make them faster and less expensive, because even within NAFTA, the dispute settlement mechanisms were not that simple to incorporate or implement, and typically they will be costly. So small and medium-sized enterprises were limited in what they could do. Competition is another area that has been enhanced. Trying to promote, again, that the companies in the three countries benefit from the competitive advantages that their counterparts offer in Mexico, in Canada, or in the US. Government procurement, this is probably one of the most important changes. Now, there are some guidelines on how to publish some of those government procurement projects, that before you have to actually subscribe to a lot of services that were not necessarily affordable, they were expensive, and you need to have an army of people actually searching and researching that stuff. With the new guidelines of the USMCA about that, the idea is to simplify those. Right now it's work in progress, so don't expect that you're just going to jump into USMCA and find you're going to find that. No, it's work in progress, and it's probably going to take all 2021, but eventually once it's ready, it's going to be a beautiful tool for small and medium-sized enterprises in particular. And last but not least is some of the changes in terms of intellectual property, e-commerce, and financial services. Particularly intellectual property and e-commerce are becoming more and more important, because if your sole source of manufacturing or supply is Asia, then you already know what are the issues and what are some of the challenges with intellectual property and even e-commerce. So having specific chapters that deal with that and create the framework to facilitate and give a space to small and medium-sized companies is a very, very good thing. So I invite you to revisit those, because it is a time probably that you could be part of this new train that is just left the station on July the 1st. Next slide, please.
Ernesto, you've mentioned extensively the new adaptations in terms of the small and medium-sized companies. I think that most people think in terms of a trade, they think, well, it's only for the huge companies, right? But the reality, at least in the United States, and I don't know the numbers in Mexico and Canada, but here in the United States, about 85% of companies that export are actually small and medium-sized companies, and so there
is. And it's not very different in Canada. The U.S. is almost identical. In the case of Mexico, the last number that I had, I think it was about 86%, and in the case of Canada, I think it's 82. So
right,
it's within that
very,
range.
very, very similar. So I mean, the point here is that exporting to different countries is not something that only the big companies are into. There's a significant portion of exports and imports that are being done by small businesses. And so this is an opportunity. USMCA is creating, is pushing that opportunity, is opening up that opportunity even more so for small and medium-sized businesses.
It finally provides the baseline for those small and medium-sized enterprises to be part of this project, and I believe that's a major accomplishment.
Okay, we're actually going to go ahead and go to the next quick poll here, and the question is: are you currently contemplating nearshoring your supply chain? Now, just in case, nearshoring means that you're bringing it from, let's say, from Canada or Mexico or somewhere that's really close by. And what countries are you looking at? So if you'll answer those, would be appreciated. Go ahead. So hang on just a minute while we go on to the next one.
Okay, now we have yes, that one. We have been talking about the USMCA, the incorporation of North American. That sounds really nice and dandy, but let's talk about in terms of why do we believe it's time for considering nearshoring, which goes in line to the question that you guys just answered. Well, this chart right here gives you not all, but some of the ammunition to give you the answer why you should be considering nearshoring. Well, let me first start by telling you today, if you are manufacturing primarily in Asia, your time frame for just transportation is from 5 to 6 weeks, depending on where you're producing and where you're moving your cargo to. Now, nearshoring, basically North America, and in the case of Mexico, if your destination is New York, you only need 5 days. If it's Los Angeles, it's 4 days. And even if you want to move to Europe, to the Rotterdam port, for example, or Yokohama in Japan, it's 16 days and 19 days correspondingly. Versus, for example, in the case of China, New York, it will, instead of 5 days, will be 32 days. Los Angeles is 18 days instead of 4 days, and so on. So you can see the difference, how you could actually set up a supply management, a supply system that is a little bit more just in time. I mean, nothing is perfectly just in time, but it's closer to that because it gives you the opportunity to do that. The difference between 1 week of transport versus 5 to 6 weeks, it's a big difference. In addition, if you look at the second column, it shows you the cost of of shipping. Today, this is per metric per square meter of cargo. If you are moving from China, in average, it's about $140 per square meter. While if you are moving it from Mexico, it's $9. So it's a big difference. It's not only the time, but it's the cost. Now, I could continue talking about a lot of other parameters and to come up to the last number that is on the right, which is the Global Manufacturing Cost Competitive Index. These numbers are from 2019 and have been assembled by the Boston Consultancy Group. And if we look at the US and Canada are the reference, US is at 100%, and Canada is at 101%. Then if we look at China, Vietnam, India, and Mexico, then based on some of the things that Alejandro alluded to, plus some of the things that I just showed you, in addition to the USMCA, we can see that Mexico positions at 96. So it's actually more competitive in 2019 than China, Vietnam, or India. This is something that I want to leave to you as homework. Think about this. Think about the changes of the USMCA with this, because I think the time is for considering nearshoring.
Thank you so much, Ernesto. In terms of the poll results, that was a home run, Ernesto, in terms of your last comments. In terms of people who are considering nearshoring to Canada, 17%, to Mexico, 8%, to both of them, 33%. And currently, we have about 42 people who are not currently considering nearshoring and reshoring, and hopefully some of the information that we provided, especially this last piece that Ernesto alluded to, will get you to start thinking. The next question is for Dina. The COVID-19 crisis has presented several challenges to manufacturing and to supply chain management in general. From the Canadian angle, what are some of the most important changes and considerations that the pandemic has introduced or has brought about in terms of supply chain management?
Thank you, Rudy. I think you're supposed to bring up another slide, which is showcasing our North American hamburger, but it was just to drive the point about how integrated our economies are. And just to build on Ernesto's point, I'd like to give an example of a company we were talking about earlier, Bombardier Recreational Products. So basically, they're a Quebec-based company. They are doing a lot of fun off-road vehicles. Their center of design is in Quebec. Their sales and logistics office is here in Dallas, and their manufacturing plant is in Mexico. So just a great example of a North American company trying to compete globally. In terms of future opportunities following the pandemic. So obviously the COVID-19 pandemic has hit global markets very hard, but you know, we are in a good place in the sense that USMCA can help all of us all our companies become more resilient and just enhance their export business. We see a lot of opportunities as we come out of the pandemic in acceleration of digitization and automation, rapid adoption of artificial intelligence, robotics, greater e-commerce penetration. As Ernesto mentioned a little bit earlier, 99% of our Canadian business makeup is actually SMEs. So they are finally not left behind through this new agreement. There's a lot of growth that we see in the Internet of Things, blockchain, cybersecurity, telecom, green mining, electric vehicles, clean energy, digital health, of course, and any type of any platform that we see trying to support digital sales. And we're very happy that there's actually a digital trade chapter that's been created. And a lot of governments, just a final closing, are coming up with ways of, helping our economy recover. And a lot of that will be tied to government procurement opportunities post-pandemic.
Well, Dina, you really know where to hit me, man, with this hamburger thing. What a wonderful, wonderful slide and wonderful topic. It really shows how ubiquitous the trade is between the United States and Mexico and all of that. You know, in a very common product that we eat on a daily basis. If you can get us the next one, okay? And this
yes, agriculture is super important, obviously.
What are some of the major agricultural products that Canada has?
Well, we're well known for our maple syrup.
Oh, for sure.
as we compete. But no, kidding aside, like we produce every beef, obviously any type of animal product. We are strong in dairy. We even have plants here very close to Arkansas from Saputo, which is a leading cheese provider in Canada, in Eastern Quebec, but they actually have processing plants here. Just a few examples.
If you can go ahead and take us back to
And
the...
also value, like we're launching, we have a super cluster in terms of developing new plant protein products as we try to move into like new formats of eating different foods. And we're leading in any type of like healthy value added ag product.
Outstanding. If you can get us to the next question here. So the very next question has to do, it says, from the Mexican angle, what are some of the most important changes? Basically the same question, right? From the Mexican angle, what are the most important changes that the pandemic has kind of brought to light and caused in terms of supply chain management? And Alejandro would like to pose that to you.
Yeah, it's pretty much what Ernesto mentioned. It's the perfect time for reshoring. It's not only the pandemic, but also the entry into force of NAFTA, the geopolitical events. It's the right time for American and Canadian companies to consider to bring your suppliers back to the region. You need to comply with new rules of origin. You need to have your supplier closer to your plants in order to avoid these effects of closing of borders or stopping cargo from Asia. But specifically about COVID, now in Mexico, we have realized that we have potential to develop new sectors like the medical devices. We have identified new links across the supply chains where we can start developing some operations, mainly in the aerospace sectors. But at the same time, it's we are bringing the best practices from abroad, not only on health field, but also as Dina mentioned, how to digitalize, how to bring the high-tech tools to the small and medium companies. Going back a bit to the SMEs sector, Rudy, it's important to mention that in Mexico, we have a strong basis on OEM and tier one companies. But in the auto industry, 85% of the components we are currently using are imported. So that means a large market for SMEs, and we invite you to take advantage of that. But again, COVID is just one effect that has deepened the interest to move to reshore companies to the North American region.
Excellent. Ernesto, I think you pretty much covered, and between you and Alejandro, you covered the opportunities that are available to SMEs, and we're running out of time. So I'd like to see, Heidi, do we have questions at this point from the audience? No questions at this point? We're very good. So Ernesto, I'll tell you what, since we're not seeing any questions at this point, I guess I will just briefly, in interest of time, what are some of the most relevant changes, basically the same question, the USMCA has created in terms of SMEs?
Sure, and if we can go to the next slide, it will be a little bit more visual. There were originally, as you can see, 24 chapters that come from the NAFTA that have been updated, but there are 10 that are new that relate to, within the USMCA, that relate to SMEs. There are 2 in particular that I would like to mention because our audience that are already exporting to Mexico and to Canada, I'm pretty sure that are going to find it very interesting. Chapter number 7, Customs and Trade Facilitation. That one made significant changes in the de minimis and what is considered the express freight, and actually changed the values in the case of Mexico to up to let me see, up to $50 US. So basically, if you are a manufacturer within North America and selling already into Mexico, for example, then if your item costs less than $50 US, then it goes straight to your consumer. No taxes, no duties, no nothing. It's straight. And in the case of Canada, it's up to $40 Canadian, which still covers a lot of items, such as t-shirts, could be bracelets, you name it. items of small value. Now, in addition, the USMCA has reviewed the rules for express freight, and it has set the levels of the in the case of Canada up to, let me see the latest number that I have here. It's 2,600 Canadian dollars, I think, to be considered still, if my memory doesn't betray me, and 2,500 for in the case of the US. So once you convert those Canadian dollars into US dollars, it's very close. It's about 2,450 or something around that. In the case of Mexico, there are discussions right now to increase that level for the current rate of 1,000 US dollars to 2,500 US dollars, but it's work in progress. It has not yet been approved. Now, the only inconvenience when you are dealing with Mexico is if the value of your shipment is above 1,000 US dollars, you need a custom broker. And it could be inconvenient because they are typically overwhelmed, overloaded, and then you need to go through one of them if it's a shipment. Again, the discussions are right now to increase that to 2,500 to equate it to what the US and Canada has, but it's work in progress. It hasn't happened yet. Last but not least, that I think Dina alluded to, is the digital trade. This is a particular important inclusion of the USMCA because it prohibits the application of custom duties on digital products as long as they are distributed electronically. So that makes it, that removes the temptation of some localities to try to impose some taxes on digital media, videos, music, content, and this opens a lot of opportunities for small and medium-sized companies because it also for the first time permits and approves the use of electronic signature. Before you couldn't. You have to actually do it in the wet way. You needed a paralegal, you needed lawyers, and you need to send the stuff to your client via FedEx or DHL or whatever the case might be, and wait. Now the USMCA removes some of those requirements and makes it less expensive, faster, and simpler. What's the benefit of this? Small and medium-sized companies.
Thank you, Ernesto. This has been a wonderful discussion, a lot of great information, and I hope that it causes the people who are listening to the webinar to consider nearshoring and reshoring and the advantages. The slide that Ernesto showed about the competitiveness when you look at timelines and freight and all of that. I mean, Mexico, Canada, and the United States are high competitive when you look them against the Asian markets. I will leave you with a couple of things. First of all, this webinar is going to be recorded, and in probably in a day or so, we're going to make it available through the Arkansas District Export Council website to be able to access it so that you can review it. Also be aware that we can make available to you a supply chain assessment tool provided by a company called Leancore, fabulous assessment tool that allows you to understand where you're at from a risk perspective. And also we can provide you with a guide to making your supply chain more resilient. Once again, give us a contact. You can call me at 501-749-7484. Or you can email me at r.ortiz, which is O-R-T-I-Z, at arkansas.edc.com, EDC as an Economic Development Commission, or you can just contact the Arkansas District Export Council and make us aware of what you're needing, whether it's the recording, whether it's the assessment tool, or whether it's a supply chain resilient guide. Thank you so much to Dina, Ernesto, and Alejandro for your expertise and your time. I think this was a very worthwhile webinar, provided lots of great information. Thank you so much, and we'll call it a day.
Thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.